Nashville word came last week that Rivendell Writers Colony in Sewanee, Tennessee, will be closing at the end of March. When I first heard the news, I wept. I was not alone. Sewanee, on top of Monteagle Mountain not far from Chattanooga, is barely a pinprick on the map, less a town than a crossroads where the gas station doubles as the local grocery store. It is also the home of the University of the South, a liberal arts college tucked into 13,000 acres on the southern end of the Cumberland Plateau. Thanks to a bequest from the playwright Tennessee Williams, Sewanee occupies an outsized place in the southern literary landscape. Williams left his entire estate to the university, stipulating that the bequest be used to foster literature, and Sewanee has become a literary center for the entire region. Beneficiaries of Williams's estate include the university's theater department, the Sewanee Writers Conference, the Sewanee School of Letters, a graduate program in literature and creative writing, and the Sewanee Review, the oldest continuously published literary quarterly in the country. Unrelated to the Williams bequest but benefiting from its proximity is Rivendell, which opened in 2013 on the site of a former summer camp for girls. The wooded campus, a large manor house and several cottages connected by trails, is perched on a bluff overlooking Lost Cove, one of the most biodiverse tracts of land in the country. Rivendell is a place of otherworldly loveliness, of bone-penetrating quiet and peace. Walker Percy wrote his first novel nearby at a desk overlooking Lost Cove. 3 years ago I arrived on the mountain, as they say around here, for my first weekend at Rivendell. I have a graduate degree in creative writing and spent a dozen years making my living as a writer, but by the time I got to Rivendell I was working as an editor and had written hardly a word of my own in years. I was exhausted by caregiving, by raising children and simultaneously tending needy elders, and I longed for an uninterrupted chance to read and write and walk in the woods. By the time I left 2 days later, I'd finished a draft of the first essay I published in this newspaper. That essay is also the centerpiece of an essay collection to be published next year, a book entirely written or revised at Rivendell over the last 3 years. Becoming a debut author at the age of 57 is nothing less than a miracle, and it's not too much to say that this work would not exist if it weren't for Rivendell Writers Colony. I've come to think of Rivendell as my spiritual home, and of Carmen Toussaint, Rivendell's executive director, as a kind of literary midwife. Toussaint's preternatural calm and kindness make it possible to move past the anxiety and despair endemic to writers, and her gift for unintrusive organization is the invisible scaffolding that has kept the place running and made it possible for writers to settle in and write. As news that the Rivendell campus would soon become a center for spiritual healing and exploration made its way across the literary South, authors took to email and social media to mourn its loss. Rivendell is already a spiritual healing and exploration center, wrote Karen Hayes, co-owner, with the novelist and Patchett, of Parnassus Books in Nashville, on Facebook. That is the power of the written word, whether it is through the creation of a work of literature, or the reading of it. I was devastated to hear that Rivendell Walker Percy's former stomping grounds is closing its doors, emailed Jamie Quattro, author of the new novel Fire Sermon. Authors typically thank people and institutions at the rear of a book, John T. Edge, founder of the Southern Foodways Alliance, said in a phone call. For the Potlicker Papers, I thanked Rivendell at the front. It mattered that much. Unlike storied writers' colonies like Yaddo and McDowell, Rivendell has always welcomed writers at the start of their careers, with young poets and short story writers sharing space with best-selling novelists and established nonfiction authors. I was 24 hours into a stay at Rivendell when I finally worked out the arc of my book, the essayist Mary Laura Philpott wrote in an email. Maybe it seems silly to think it took sitting in a silent house in the middle of nowhere for that to happen, but that's the gift Rivendell gave me. In a painful irony of timing, Ms. Philpott sold her first essay collection 3 days before Rivendell announced it was closing. It's tempting to assume that the closing of a writer's colony is a sign of its failure. But as a news release makes clear, the opposite is true. Rivendell is one of the nation's most cherished residency programs for authors, the announcement reads. In 5 years, we have helped hundreds of writers reach countless readers. In fact, the benefactor who founded and has been underwriting Rivendell's literary mission has simply changed her mind. She has every right to do that, of course. It's her property and her money. But it's also a catastrophic loss to the literary life of this region, and it highlights the downside of relying exclusively on private philanthropy to support the arts in these troubled times. A generous and forward-looking benefactor is an incalculable gift to any nonprofit organization, but the most generous benefactor can't provide the stability of a national endowment for the arts or a national endowment for the humanities. The most forward-looking benefactor can't be relied on the way institutional support from a university or foundation can. There's a reason Tennessee Williams left his estate to a college and not to a human being, even a visionary human being. Here's hoping Sewanee or another institution unwavering in its commitment to literature can step up to recreate this necessary incubator for the literary arts on a mountain in Tennessee.